Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be figure drawing, or in this case specifically gesture drawing. So if you know anything about art school, like you've applied to art school before, you've tried to go to art school, you want to go to art school, you've been to art school, there's one thing you've probably heard a lot, which is figure drawing. And I know professors make a lot of emphasis on this, and I do agree. I do think it should be there. Just like, why wouldn't you want to draw naked people, right? But no, that's not the situation, and like that's not going where you thought it was going to go. But I definitely think gesture drawing is extremely important, and I do believe that knowing your basics and foundations come in handy in many situations. However, a lot of artists or people who are interested in doing art don't have the resources or the opportunity to assist, to a figure drawing class, pay for one, assist to one, or even like in my case, I don't even have sessions around me. Like I live in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, and that doesn't exist here. Or maybe I haven't looked hard enough. So I'm here to remind you that this is something that you can do from home. It might not be the same as like doing it with a live model, but you can always learn a lot. And I'm gonna explain to you a few concepts on figure drawing and gesture drawing. I'm gonna show you a few ways of finding references online. And also, I'm gonna show you a few tips and tricks on how I do things. All right, and like now that we've said all that, let's just get to it and draw naked people. All right, so let's first define figure drawing and then gesture drawing. Figure drawing is usually drawing the human body, which means focusing on that anatomy, focusing on that like accuracy of the body. You really want to capture the details, you really want to capture the reality of that body. While gesture sort of like falls under the figure drawing umbrella, gestures are meant to be simpler, and your goal is to capture the essence of it. When I say the essence, it's sort of like the movement, the flow, even the emotions, like if someone's like really happy, you want to capture that like energy and like that like happiness. If someone's really sad, you want to capture that person being defeated and like that sadness. So that's how I interpret it. And again, I come from an animation background, so I was like really trained to prioritize and focus on gestures. And now that we have that clear, hopefully you have it clear, hopefully I explained it properly and I didn't get you super confused. But yeah, now I want to go over how I break down the body in order to simplify it, let's put it that way, and then apply that into our gestures. And now let's just get into this. Usually I like to divide my body or my figure in shapes, like simplify them and make them as simple as possible. You start from general into specific, from big to small. So for that, I take the biggest parts, in this case would be the head, the torso, and then the hips. Those will be like my three main parts. And then I use balls or spheres for the joints. And then I connect those joints with lines. And from there you can move into something with more volume, which would be, a mannequin with cylinders instead of like lines here. And then if you really want to get into, like even more detail, which eventually, yeah, like that's what you want, you start adding, like muscle and like skin and like flesh, making it look more human instead of like a mannequin or a robot. Again, if you have like some practice on this, you should be fine, you should be good, you should just like be ready to jump into the gestures. But if you're really starting on this and you're a beginner, it would be really good for you to try to do, a couple of these beforehand so you get familiar with them and then jump into the gestures. So now I'm gonna pull up my references and I'm gonna start taking you through my thought process on how I would approach this. The first thing I'm gonna look out for is the line of action. The line of action would be an imaginary line. It's like one simple line or stroke. Well, you can have multiple strokes, but that sort of like goes across the entire body and sort of defines the pose in like the simplest way. And it sort of like tells you which way the action is happening. So yeah, let's quickly identify those from here. Like this would be the line of action of this girl. This guy has a very similar line of action. This would be the line of action of this guy. And then like an easy way to identify where that line of action would go or would be, it's sort of to follow the spine. And usually you have two types of line of actions, which are the C shape and then the S shape. All of these are actually C shapes in my opinion. So this is sort of an S curve, this is an S curve, this is kind of an S curve, and I think you guys get the idea. Also, like disclaimer, I know I'm censoring these references a little bit, or I'm like finding references that are not fully nude. It's mostly because of YouTube. Like I don't want the video to be taken down. There's nothing wrong with nudity, and there's nothing wrong with like, some like or you probably have some of those. I have some of those. So yeah. Anyway, that's our tea on line of action. The other thing we want to constantly look out for, it's like movement. Even like a super still, straight on pose most likely has movement. One, the line of action helps to figure that one out. But I think another really good way, an easy good way to spot the movement in a pose, it's by identifying the shoulders and the hips. So this line across here and then like this line across here. Let's identify those here. They are opposite. So if you have, well, in a pose that has like some like slight movement, see how this is inclined in that direction and this is on the other direction. This is inclined on that direction and this is inclined on the other one. Here's like a little bit harder to see, but still kind of like the same concept. So the moment you identify those, it will give you a lot of information already for you to use into your gesture. Then we have exaggeration or pushing the pose, which means if someone's like arching their back, you're gonna want to like arch it more. If someone is like curled up into a ball, you want to like exaggerate that into a smaller ball. All right, and just so you guys like have a better understanding, I put together a few poses. And here you can see the original pose next to a pushed version or an exaggerated version of that pose. The line of action has been exaggerated, and now these are like way more dynamic than the original ones and like way more expressive and way more interesting. The next thing to keep in mind, and this is where it will help you to see and understand volume, it's to draw through your shapes. And I think this is like a really hard concept to grasp. I remember my professor being always like, oh, you're drawing outlines, you're drawing outlines, you're drawing outlines. And I would be like, what the hell are you saying? Like, what the hell is he saying? And eventually, you know, like one day it clicked. And the whole mannequin thing is really helpful for that. Let's take this pose right here and then this drawing. Here I just drew the outside without really considering the structure underneath the skin, which is a common mistake beginners make. And that makes the drawing feel flat. However, if you look at this other example, here I drew through my shapes and found the structure underneath. And the most important reason to draw through your shapes, in my opinion, is that it really trains your brain and forces your brain to think, one, in 3D, not 2D, and also it teaches your brain to remember that things are connected. And then the last thing that I have to say here, it's the silhouette. Like, silhouettes are so important because, again, they really help you to get your idea across. This is a concept that it's extremely important in animation, but probably it's just as important in any illustration. You want people to quickly see your illustration or your drawing or whatever and understand what you're trying to convey or understand the action that's happening. The poses that I have for references here don't really explain the purpose of like a clean silhouette. So I'm gonna use an example actually with me. If you're drawing someone using their phone and you have this and you make my pose black like this, you have no idea what that person's doing. However, if you like turn me to the side 3/4 and like you extend my arm out, even if it's like black, you understand what this person's doing, right? And always remember how important negative space is. The cleaner your negative space is, the easier it will be to read that pose. All right, and now that we went through all these, I'm going to quickly show you a few different ways for you to find references. The first one's going to be pretty simple, it's Pinterest. If you go into Pinterest and you look for figure drawing references, you'll find a lot of poses. Also, you'll find a lot of like drawings already, but yes, you can see like these are good ones. This is a great one. Also, like something fun that Pinterest has is that you can even see what other artists are doing. Here you can see multiple people like drew this pose. The second option that I'm gonna show you, it's called lineofaction.com, and I think this is like a great website. You can choose if you want nude models or if you want covered models. In this situation, I'm gonna click nude. Then you can choose if you want female presenting or male presenting models, and then even the age, which to me it's like a little bit weird, but that's okay. Baby, child, teen, or adult. Clearly, we're gonna choose adults. And then you can choose if you want the poses to be all the same length, because this will time you. And it'll work like a class, you know, so it will give you a few poses, like a few 30-second poses, a few 1 minute, a few 5 minutes, and a few 10 minutes or something like that. It depends on like which one you choose. But yeah, I think that's like an amazing resource. And then yeah, you just click get to drawing. And then the clock, it's on the top right corner. And the other one would be a sketch daily. Here's the link. And it has like a very similar feature to Line of Action. And then if you want to take it to the next level and you want really like complex poses, I would recommend like go on YouTube and like look for dance videos, like people dancing, great poses. All right, so let me quickly put this away and get my sketchbook, and then we will do some demonstrations. All right, and we're back on our new setup. The game plan is to do 2 poses. The first one is going to be a 5-minute one. For the first one, I'm gonna use the mannequin approach with the cylinders, so you guys can see how I apply that into the gestures. And then the other one is going to be another 5-minute one with my personal ways of doing things. Oh yeah, and speaking of which, I'm gonna be using mostly my color erase pencils. I swear by these 2. These are great because they have such a big range when it comes to pressure. They can go from really light to really dark, and that's always very helpful when it comes to sketching. And then I might throw in these 2. So, and with that said, let's just hit it in 3, 2, 1. So I always start with my line of action and then quickly place my biggest shapes. First, I draw very gently and continue to find my marks like the shoulders and hips before I commit to any lines. And then I started going into more detail and draw my limbs as cylinders. One thing I want to point out is the fact that I added lines around the cylinders, and these really help to show the perspective and direction the cylinders are pointing. Alright, and this is our first pose. Here you can see it. Here we really tested the cylinder technique and really see how these ellipses really show which way the legs and the arms are going, and overall it really shows the idea of like everything we just went over. So hopefully you were able to see how I applied those principles on this one. And now for a second one, I'm going to take a few more liberties, because actually that's the point of this, you know, like you start again with the basics, you learn the rules, and then like you figure out how to break them. Also, disclaimer, drawing with this in the front is very hard. So this time around I am blocking and sort of sculpting the base of the body with the marker. This is a way looser approach, but remember, once you're familiar with the rules, then you can break them. This way I like to think the drawing reveals itself to me, and once I am happy with my base, I go in with my pencil and start adding the details. Whenever I'm not sure of something, I go back to my basics, like I just did around the knees, and that way I make sure everything makes sense and feels connected. Alright, and we're done with our second gesture. Here it is. Here you can see that I kept everything very loose without hesitating too much on my lines, on my strokes, which is ultimately the goal when it comes to gesture drawing. And that's all. That's it for today. And with that said, if you made it all the way here, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you liked this video and hopefully you learned something from it. Again, this topic is like extremely extensive and we can do multiple videos on this. Trust me, I will do that because I really love the topic. To me, the human body overall is such a beautiful thing. Also, remember that you can go outside, go to the park, go to the mall if you want to draw people like from life. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to find me outside of here, here are my socials. And with all that said, hopefully, I'll see you in the next one.